Alright, YouTube. So, I've been keeping a bit of an eye on what's been going on in Charlottesville, in Virginia. And I have to say, I told you so. See, like, I've predicted this happening for a long time. Like this kind of like white supremacist thing bubbling up to the surface, and them organising, arming themselves, having more of a presence, having more airtime. I predicted this happening after the Punch a Nazi thing. Once all the like kind of the whole culture of, you know, virtue signaling that you'd punch a Nazi and all that shit, that essentially has... I just knew straight away that people would start looking into what these people are about, because everyone's skeptical these days. So if the mainstream media or left-wing pages, whatever it is, are saying this is such and such a thing, people are going to go, well, are they telling the truth, though? Because, I mean, they didn't really tell the truth about Donald Trump and all the things that he said and took him out of context. So now everyone's skeptical of, like, everything that anyone says. So, so now people used to trust the left-wing media because they were somewhat slightly more neutral in the past, I guess. I mean, I don't know how neutral you can be being left-wing, but you know what I mean. Like they felt more objective, I suppose, to say right-wing media groups. Whereas now they're as bad, if not worse, than right-wing media groups at the moment, in terms of misrepresenting the facts and stuff like that. So when you've got people like Richard Spencer coming around and people are reporting on him, and he gets a publicly videoed thing, and it goes around, it goes viral, and everyone's there going, "Oh yeah, punch a Nazi," brr. And like people are like, "Well, is this guy a Nazi though?" And like personally, I would say that he falls pretty close to that bracket. He's certainly a white supremacist. You know, they have like, what is it? Like non-violent genocide, which basically just means deport all the non-whites or whatever, which is just completely retarded in my opinion. Like honestly, like I love people from all different races and cultures and stuff, so I don't give a shit about that. Just so long as the cultures are compatible enough, that's all that I care about, or people are assimilating to the culture. Because I think Western culture beats a lot of other cultures. I think we're one of the most tolerant and we're some of the most forward-thinking cultures in the world. And, you know, we only got here because we innovated and we had free rights to talk about different issues and protest and assemble and all these things. So the only reason we got this far was because of that. And we kind of need to hold on to those rights. But those rights are being challenged at the moment by certain groups, especially left-wing groups who want to say hate speech is all wrong, whatever. But they don't really list off what hate speech really is. They're just saying basically anyone with a different opinion to very staunchly left-wing thinkers are basically Nazis at this point, which is why the Punch a Nazi thing was so dangerous, just because they were essentially label anyone as Nazis. Now, I'm not a fan of this white supremacist thing. Like, I think it's bullshit. But what I will say about it is that they should be able to show up and protest and assemble like anyone else. But if you go down to counter-protest these people, if you go down there and start getting violent with them, then that is it. Like, they've won, basically. More people are going to look at them and go, hey, white people are being persecuted by a broader brush of society. Hey, maybe I do need to stick with my own. Maybe I do need to do that. You know, and it's like, you're giving people reason to sympathise with them. And that is the most dangerous part about it. Like, if you carry on giving these white supremacists essentially what they want. I mean, they're showing up to something controversial, like the General Lee statue being taken down. Now, that statue is going to be taken down whether they protest or not, right? I mean, essentially, the government's going to take that down. And to be honest with you, I don't have too much of an opinion on that. Like, for me, when it comes to the statue itself and that being a symbol and all that stuff for, like, slavery and whatever, on one hand, I find it, like, okay, yeah, I can see why people are upset because, yeah, it does. I do think it represents that period of time. On the other hand, though, I remember lots of discussions in the past among liberals and blacks and stuff like that about people whitewashing history, like trying to downplay slavery and downplay the darker sides of American and Western cultures and history and stuff by trying to cover up old cartoons that depict slavery, that do this, or or depict people in bad ways, or whatever. Africans with big lips, or dressed like savages, or whatever. Stuff like that. People talk about whitewashing history on one aspect, but then when they try and take down a statue that represents something to do with slavery, a prominent general for the South who comes from that area, like, I'm assuming that's why the statue's there. I mean, like, then isn't that also whitewashing history? I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, it depends. I mean, like, if they had some kind of, like, monument to emancipated slaves there as well, then wouldn't that be more fair? Rather than spending the money to have it demolished and replaced or whatever, why don't they just get a new monument which they can put somewhere close by that is to commemorate, I don't know, desegregation in the area or something like that? Wouldn't that be a better idea than essentially just stoking the flames of all this kind of race hatred stuff? It's just, I don't know. I just feel like there's better answers to these problems and what people are doing. Like, everyone's just showing how fucking stupid they are, and they're also showing that they've never learned anything from history. Now, like, I had a bit of a discussion about this earlier on Facebook, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm a bit of a sadomasochist, so I get myself involved in Facebook quarrels. And I basically said, I quoted MLK saying that, hate doesn't drive out hate, only love can do that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. And somebody then commented going, well, he also said that rioting is the voice of the unheard. And that is such a fucking disingenuous thing to say, because, yeah, he said that, but he didn't mean that riots are justified and that hurting people and burning businesses down and blah, 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 that is justified. He was just making a statement about why riots occur, right? Not because he thinks it's right to do those things, because he never did, and he never advocated for it. Every one of his marches was a peaceful march. He never advocated violence, and if anybody was getting violent in his group, he was one of the first people to either stop them from doing it or like condemn them for doing it. And he tried to build a culture of getting black people to work for themselves and build themselves up. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's been fighting against white supremacists since his fucking birth. This is somebody who grew up through the 30s and 40s, like, where racism could essentially say in the modern era was at its peak. So, like, in the 20th century, it's just... And in some ways, you can say he even won that fight by helping enact the civil rights movement and having laws passed that desegregate schools and workplaces and all the rest of it. Like, it's... Like, how can you look at someone like that through history and then also simultaneously think that it's okay to punch a Nazi? Like, it's just like... And like, let's look at something like the Black Panthers, right? Black Panthers come about because some people like MLK, Malcolm X, and various other members of black movements and stuff like that at the time were essentially assassinated by cops, CIA, and stuff like that. There was very real persecution going on, and very, very real racial tensions going on. Because it wasn't, I mean, realistically enough, like, it wasn't that long since, the Jim Crow era and all that stuff, right? So, so in that regard, that the Black Panthers came about because of the persecution and the way that people attacked and belittled and would essentially say that black people are like kind of the root of all problems in society. But in the last couple of years, there's been numerous movements that have been doing the same thing to white people. Well, white men specifically, being like, white men are the root of all problems in the USA or wherever. Like, you know, white men are essentially the devils in a lot of respects. You know, any discussion about race, white people need to shut up. You know, or like you had Trump supporters being attacked. Almost every single Trump rally that ever happened in the USA, that people waited outside of those rallies, counter-protesters, and attacked people. Right? You had so that's right-wing people being alienated right there. You had conservative speakers all over the country being shut down forcibly, by the way, forcibly, not, you know, or by some kind of conspiracy with the actual university leaders, where they were essentially just going like, "Nah, you hate speech, so we're not gonna do it." It's like they'll agree to do the speech, and then like later on, cancel, be like, "Nah, we think you hate speech, actually." You know, obviously they're just trying to make an example out of them. You know, there's like. And then there's the whole incidents where there's been incidents of Black Lives Matter protests then descending into riots where people are attacking people for being white. Like, there's those videos on YouTube of people being dragged out of their cars and being battered for being white. And then, so if you think that all of that going on publicly, that everyone can see it's happening. You got the punching Nazi thing, you got all this different kind of persecution, you got ideological persecution, you got feminists saying that white men are the worst people in the world, you got Black Lives Matter saying that white people are the worst people in the world, you've got white people who openly are white guilt, you know what I mean, like they're openly flagellating themselves like some fucking weird pseudo-Christian bullshit, and like, you know, it's if you get all of that and put it in the pot, then you get the alt-right. You get the alt-right. So like my whole thing when I was trying to talk with other liberals about, you know, punch a Nazi and stuff like that, they were calling me the doormat for white supremacy, not realizing that punching the Nazi is literally putting the doormat down. Like, that is literally opening the door and going, "Come in." Because literally those, like I say, more people are going to sympathise with it. And if you breed this culture against white people, if you're not speaking out against this race-baiting bullshit, if you're not speaking out against that kind of thing, then you're essentially letting it happen. You're stoking those flames. I don't want white supremacy to happen, and I'm telling you right now that if it gains any real traction in the West, like I'm talking real traction, I'm talking actual armed militias, wars in the streets, then you can bet your bottom fucking dollar that I would definitely join up to fight that, because I'm not having anyone taking my shit away. Like, no way. I know that they're in their eyes, they're fighting for me being white. They probably think of me as like, especially in America, they probably think of me as like more white than them, just because I'm from like the motherland of Europe, I guess. But like, honestly, I don't have any interest in that, because I have an interest in freedom of speech and freedom of rights and freedom for other people to come to this country and stuff like that. I have a freedom of religion, things like that. I believe in those things because it's the bread and butter of life. You know, you don't get a true understanding of life without those things, and we can't really progress without it either. I mean, you look at most countries have had dictatorships culturally are very backwards in a lot of ways, because they've just kind of been stifled. They've been given very very filtered media exposure and exposure to information and things like that. So that there's really like, it's a lot of people who have had to deal with dictators for a long time really are very backwards in terms of how they view the world and how things work there. And the reason why people in democratic countries that have been democratic for a longer period of time are so much more forward thinking is because we've had that marketplace of ideas where it's not illegal for somebody to have a different opinion, or they don't get, fucking punched in the face for it, essentially. So, it's like, so I started to tell people, like, look, if you start going to these alt-right marches and attacking people, then guess what? Eventually, they're going to start... I mean, you're talking about people who believe in the Second Amendment, so they're going to come down with guns, and a lot of them. And, like, they're trained as well. This is something that people don't quite understand. A lot of the liberals and stuff like that, because they're peace-loving, even though they're probably some of the biggest hate-mongers in the world, like, they're peace-loving, which means that they don't have guns, and, like, they're not really trained with guns, and they're not really trained with violence either. They want to get violent with people that they perceive to be violent, but they don't actually really know how to engage in it or how to actually fight or organise in that way. They all dress up in black and put masks on and hope that strength in numbers will do the work for them. Whereas you've got people on the right there who have got... I mean, if you're looking at the alt-right, I would say, even if they all got together, say if they all got together, and let's say they banded together with certain other, like, white identitarian movements as well, like, let's say they get together with the KKK as well. Let's just say roughly there's 10,000 members of the KKK, and let's say with the alt-right, let's say there's another 10,000 if they band together with all different other, like, white things. So let's say 20,000 strong militia that are all trained in fighting, and not only fighting, but you've also got veterans involved in there. You've got people who have very high velocity weaponry. They're kitted out with bulletproof vests, stuff like that. You get them into a particular kind of movement and organised, marching through your streets, and you want to start some shit with them, it's going to go wrong very quickly. And when you've got someone like Trump in power, who, honestly, I don't know where he stands on this. I honestly don't think he's for the white nationalists. I really don't. Like, I know that people want to pin that on him, but I don't think he actually is. But I also know that he's not for the other side either. So I'm not... To me, I think it's going to come down to who's instigating the violence, of who he's going to crack down on. And I bet you bottom dollar, I mean, a lot of the time this violence has been started by the left, which is exactly why the right-wing people now have started arming themselves when they come to these things, because they just expect to be attacked now. Like, that's how naive... Well, I don't know about naive, but, like, they were trying to play it by the book originally, They were just trying to, come together and show their opinion, without any threat of violence. But then you just get these people attacking them constantly, and it's just like, well, what else do you expect them to do? I mean, even I would. If I was going to protests and marches regularly, and they were being disrupted by violent protesters, then, mate, I'd probably come down with a weapon. I probably would. Just because I'm not having someone think that because I have a different opinion to them, that gives them the right to fucking hit me in the head with a bike lock or something like that. So basically, this video is an I told you so, and it's only going to get worse from here if there's not any kind of parlay. There needs to be some kind of meeting in the middle where leaders of Black Lives Matter or something stretch out a hand, you know what I mean? They need to stretch out a hand and say, hey, maybe we need to stop this madness and have a talk or something. Like, do some kind of public talk that can go out into YouTube, go out into the zeitgeist, and people can ruminate on it. You know, a lot of people out there going, "Oh, we don't want to give a platform to racists and blah blah blah." Well, unfortunately, you already have. You've done it multiple times, and you continue to seem to want to do that. And the only way it's going to de-escalate the problem is to give them perhaps those last couple of platforms to really put their ideas out there, and for everyone to suddenly turn around and go, man, these guys are whack. I think that one of the reasons why they're scared to do that, though, is not because they think their views are illegitimate. I think it's because they're scared that not all of their points are legitimate. Like, I don't think deporting everybody who's not white is a legitimate point of view. But some of them will be, like, some of their points will be legitimate. Like, you know, if they come up against someone like Black Lives Matter and they start turning the tables about black on black crime being extremely high, more than any other demographic in the US, and wondering why they're not doing anything about it, even though their name is Black Lives Matter. You know, they should have called themselves Police Brutality Matters or some shit like that if they didn't want it to get confused. But I'm pretty sure they did want that confusion. I think that was kind of the point, wasn't it, to call it Black Lives Matter? It was meant to be inflammatory. I mean, let's not fuck about here. Like, I think they did know that, like, people were going to conflate Black Lives Matter not just with police brutality, but with Black lives actually mattering to people. And therefore, if that's the case, a lot of people are going to call that philosophy into question if, you know, Black lives don't seem to matter to other black people. You know, that's what it's, that people are going to call that into question. And, you know, people are going to call into question the amount of interracial homicides, where a lot of the people being killed in those interracial homicides are actually black people killing white people. You know, like, that's an uncomfortable fact, unfortunately. You know, it's not a lot, by the way, in terms of the actual numbers themselves. But if you just want to like look at it, though, just in generally speaking, if you want to go into that competition, point for point, Pain Olympics bullshit, then unfortunately you're going to have to bring up the fact that that's there. And those alt-right people will do that in order to bring up their point. And these Black Lives Matter people are going to stumble on that point, because they can't really refute that. And what are they going to do about it? They've done nothing visible for Black Lives for black communities, literally. Like, I see so much shit on YouTube, people making videos, because anyone can make videos now, and I don't know if they fucking realise this, but there are so many black people out there making videos. I mean, they live in the heart of this stuff. They have to deal with this every day. A lot of these black people who join Black Lives Matter are not even really part of it. Like, they don't live in ghettos and stuff. They're part of the middle class. You have to remember that, like, something like only 30% of the black community actually lives in that poverty, in that ghetto state, whereas a lot of people are actually moving more into the middle class and getting married and things like that. They still have the highest rates of single parenthood and all that kind of stuff. But just to boil it down again, it's a section that does that. But even then, that section still produces half of the murders in the entire of the country. That's a minority within the minority of people. That is so astounding. Like, you can't ignore that. And, like, they're going to bring that up. Black Lives Matter are not going to be able to refute it. And they're going to stumble and they're going to look weak. And that's why they can't have these discussions. That's why it's easier for them to say, oh, they're just Nazis, fuck them, we're not going to give them a platform. You know, what they need to do is get their shit together, start working on plans to actually help black communities. I mean, that guy, what is it, Talcum X, whatever his fucking name is, he's made a lot of money off the back of all this stuff, as have other Black Lives Matter activists, like Linda Soros and all, whatever the fuck her name is. They've made a lot of money off the back of this. But have you noticed that they're not spending it in the communities that they say that they're fighting for? They don't go down there setting up shelters. They don't go down there, like, actually taking the time. They just want to show up, say some inspirational shit, and then go home and count their money. You know, they want to keep people in perpetual victimhood because that's the business. They look at it as a business. It's not because they really care. Like, there's that guy out there. What's his name? I really wish I could remember his name, but I can't remember his name right now. But I think Vice did a piece about him where I think there's a few videos about him. I think a few people have approached him just because he is that peculiar. He's such a peculiar person. I think there's actually been a couple of documentaries about him. But essentially, he's a black fella, lives in the South, I believe. I'm not sure where in the South, but he lives in the South of America. And he has essentially been making friends with KKK members. And to date, he has like something like 200 plus people that he's converted away from the KKK. That's one black man making friends with the KKK members and had them leave the KKK and leave their racist ideologies behind by building a bridge rather than burning it. And that is powerful. That is powerful as fuck. But nobody gives a fuck about him. Nobody gives a fuck about that man. I give that man a lot of respect because that takes a lot of fucking balls to go and do that. But that man is so self-assured. If you look at him and how he talks about it, he's like, look, I don't care that they like, when he's talking about it, he's really calm about it. He's just like, I don't care that they hate me because I know that they don't really know me, and I'm going to go down there and you know, I just want to speak to him man to man, because once they speak to me man to man, then they're going to see a different side to things. They're going to see I'm not an animal. They're going to see I'm not this, that, and the other thing that they've been told that I am, and then maybe that they'll think differently. And guess what? He was right. But nobody cares about that approach, because obviously punching a Nazi is more important. You know, virtue signalling is more important. I think that's the end of my rant, but basically I just want to say, honestly, I hope this shit gets resolved, but I'm having a tough time seeing how that's going to happen. Especially with the attitude that a lot of people have had towards this white supremacist thing, you know, like how the way that they've been approaching it. Honestly, the way that it's been going has been stoking the flames, and it's disgusting, in my opinion. All this violence against right-wing people for such a long time. It's been like 2 years or more now that people have just been attacked constantly for ages. And then as soon as these white supremacist folks gain enough strength and population that they can march around with torches and, oh boy, now we've got a problem. You know what I mean? Like, whereas literally, I see the only reason I know about the Antifa attacking people is because people filmed it and put it on YouTube. No one in the mainstream media covered it. No, BBC never covered it. No, literally no, CNN never covered it. No, literally no one covered it whatsoever. MSNBC, CBS. The only people that covered it was Fox News, surprisingly. And the only reason they did that was because obviously it was conservative talkers that were being attacked. So, of course, Fox News were going to report it. But they were the only ones. Left-wing media had no interest in talking about these left-wing ideologues smacking people over the head with bike locks. You know, it's... And the only one that they did report on, the only times that they did report on violence to do with this kind of thing, was when these left-wing ideologues broke into Trump rallies, that they were trying to be kept out of. They'd break in and then cause a scene, and then somebody would fucking attack them. I remember one, it's kind of ironic as well, because there was one in particular where these fellas were dressed up like the KKK to kind of lampoon Trump supporters as being, like, you know, mad racists and all that. They were coming up the stairs, like, because they were obviously being thrown out by security. But as they were coming up the stairs, a black guy at the Trump rally started kicking the shit out of them. Beautiful stuff. But it's just, honestly, like, you can't get more ironic than that. And at the moment, I just, like, the America has become irony central. It just seems to be everything is turning on its head. and honestly, it's so disappointing. And I just wish that it could get sorted out somehow with some cooler heads. Cooler heads will prevail. Remember that. So please, just try to calm down a little bit. You know, I know it's heated. I know it is. I'm not asking you to not be emotional in your own private life. But when it comes to actually facing the crunch, cooler heads will prevail. So, yeah, remember that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Give me a like. Give me a subscribe. I'll suck that dick. Oh, I'll suck it. I'll suck it. I'll suck it good. I'll lick that pussy. I'll get in there. What else do you want me to do? I'll I'll get up in that ass. I'll get all up in that ass. That sweet little ass. I'll get in your little boy pussy. Your little moist little boy pussy. Yeah, I'll get right in there. Yeah, I'll get in those flaps, them walls, them guts. I'll do what it takes to get that like and subscribe. So gives the whole shebang. Give us a comment, see what you think as well. I know this video is a little bit longer than usual. I try and keep it 20 minutes, but I had a bit more to say about this. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good day.